because there's a lot of stories I could go into. Yes.
I have a bunch of questions, but I don't want to dominate everything. Anyway, first, wonderful story, man. I'm really impressed. Very cool. And, I work on a lot of school board races, and I know what it can be like working on those down ballot races. And I'm curious, what was your ballot position in your race? And how is that determined? Is it random?
Yeah. So it's random, but that comes into the minute politics that I learned for next time. So for example, I went against a guy. His name is James Lemon. He goes by Jim though. So it said James parentheses Jim Lemon. So his name is huge, and then my name is like, I don't have a middle name, so it's just Patrick Ross. And I looked at that like I didn't even vote for like 5 minutes. I was just like looking at it like, that bastard, I should have, And again, I come from one of the most contested state legislature. So if you know about ALEC, it's in the #1 in ALEC proposed bills. Wisconsin's #2. So I come from the capital where like I'm used to fighting with people and yelling and protesting. So they know that I'm not only lobbying with a student's voice, but if they say no, I'm going to come with a protest next week. So I come to the school board, and it was very odd for me. Everyone's agreeing, and I'm like, what is this, democracy? And it was 5 of them, and out of those 5, there's a Tea Party lady, a moderate Republican, moderate Democrat, and the Mormon guy, I wouldn't know what to classify him as, libertarianish. And then me, I would say progressive. But then I was agreeing with the Tea Party lady sometimes, and I was like,
Yeah, right.
am I wrong? What, do you know your position? So for example, I had one of my first no votes the other day, because I haven't started to propose new legislation again in terms of definition. Like I want to propose ethnic studies. Fundamentally, as a progressive, I think they should be infused into our studies. I shouldn't have to have an elective for my culture. When 70% of the kids, or 80, no, including natives and black, it's like 90% are people of color. But I know that's the pragmatic route to go. So I voted no on mixing at the School Board Association statewide. Voted no on mixing the Native American caucus and the Latino caucus. So they were both going to have, so the president and the vice president would have a vote, ideally from each of those communities, but it's one caucus. So the Tea Party lady, didn't like it because it was 2 votes. And I didn't like it because you're fundamentally saying those 2 communities are the same, even if they have different votes. Because we have those 2 caucuses that are being merged, and then we have a black caucus, and then everyone else. And they're not exclusive, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So like the vice president of the black caucus is a white lady. So for Arizona politics, you can imagine. So in terms of my personal reason against it, was that the tokenization of it. Because if I'm a student or a teacher on the reservation, I'm dealing with alcoholism, suicide, and energy and environmental problems and a different culture. Versus if I'm Latino, I'm dealing with a lot of the undocumented, the ELD community, etc. It's fundamentally different problems.
Well, what was your ballot position in your race?
Like 3rd, I think.
Okay. I'm just curious because I worked on, those are low information campaigns, elections, and so what happens a lot is people just pick the first name as they go down.
Yeah, so name recognition was my
especially if it's not
biggest
partisan race.
Yeah.
Because I've worked campaigns where we did everything. We worked as hard as we could. Our candidate was 3rd on ballot position, and a person who, I don't even know if they ran a campaign at all, won the race.
Yeah, so I mean, name recognition
is really important in those
races.
I
I would say name recognition is definitely like in the top 3 things that doesn't really make sense. My friend kept joking like, you think you're gonna win just because you have signs? And I'm like, probably.
But when people know almost nothing about that election,
So
on the basis of
that ties back to me being very unorthodox. So previously, in terms of unorthodox, I had lived in an apartment, college apartment, that was private, separate of the college, and they had free printing. And I remembered this, and I still had friends there. So I quote unquote broke in. This isn't illegal. My friend invited me. So I went there, and then I used his access key to go to the printer. It's a big industrial printer. Mind you, the Democratic Party was charging me for ink, so I was like, no. So I went there, and I just bought a bunch of paper at Target. It's like probably like $100, thousands of papers. So each white piece of paper like this, I divided into 3. just like door flyers, black and white, can't afford color, because that free printer was black and white. So on one side it just said my last name real big, Morales, but again all my branding was blue, so it just said Morales in black and white. But I'm running for nonpartisan, so that might have helped me. And then on the other side, just a brief description of everything I'd ever done. So it was basically a resume, because it said my positions, but it said a lot of organizations. So if you looked at them, you're like Environment Arizona, HRC, he's progressive. But if you're conservative and you don't vote often, you're like, oh, he cares about family. But our definition is very different, I see pro-choice as family.
Yeah.
So I printed out thousands of flyers and then just cut them at my house. So recently I was working on the Bernie campaign, and so my home, because I kicked out that girlfriend, side effect of the election. So my living room became an office, and my office became my other office. So my living room has big TVs for the van, the Voter Access Network. It has industrial printers. All I need now is like the yard supplies, like to put in posts and things like that, because I want to build my own infrastructure independent of the party. Sometimes they like me and sometimes they don't.
Right.
So that way I can actually be free speech, have free speech about it.
To do that, man.
Yeah, so I mean, I couldn't afford to mail out those flyers that I had kind of printed, for free, essentially. Because imagine I have thousands of flyers for $100. It was great cost. But again, they're not union printed. But for that, I didn't necessarily care. So I can't mail them out. So instead of working out, me and some of my friends, volunteers, my age, we're running door to door, and then putting them in each one. So traditionally, canvassing, you would get about 100 doors in 4 hours. We did about 1,000 doors in 2 hours. So it was a lot. And I'm not I wasn't buff or anything, but it was much faster than just talking to them all. So after we talked to the left and the independents to swing them, I did this in all the conservative neighborhoods. But it got to the point where we were going so fast that it didn't make sense to look up their address and find out which conservatives, which Democrats, so I just did it everywhere. And so everyone knew my name, and I didn't know anyone in the city, so I couldn't put yard signs in their house. So I just blanketed the whole city. So every street had my sign on it, and these are smaller ones, not the big city council ones, but a lot of it was name recognition.
Why has nobody sued to create single-member districts in your voters?
Just because of the population. So in terms of precincts, so these are like neighborhoods, political neighborhoods. Precincts, there's 21. There's 2 that are 90% and above Latino, including that township. The other one is Victory Precinct or La Victoria. So those are the 2 lowest performing schools, very suspicious. And then the rest of them are above 80% white. And then the black population is spread throughout. And Native is within that. And they bus in as well from a different reservation. So a lot of it is the gentrification. So that township, Guadalupe, is my biggest example for gentrification, because it's like a big rectangle, right? And half of it is in my school district, half of it is in a different school district, so their vote gets cut in half. High school-wise, half of it is in one district sideways, and half of it is in the other one. Legislatively, it's not in 26 or 18, it's in a different one, it's in Phoenix. It's not even part of Phoenix. So it ends up splitting the vote from 4,000, a block of 4,000 voters to 200-300 for each race. So in terms of name recognition, on the Pebble, so voting by mail, I had gotten about 20% of the vote previous to election day, because they didn't know who I was. And then all of my swag came in, signs and things like that. And then after that, on election day, if you look at just those numbers, I got 80% of the vote.
Wow.
But on election day, it was the closest race in the state. It was 33.333, literally. So I didn't know that I had won for 10 days. Wow. Which I was having a heart attack every day. I was like, can I lose already? So everyone knew if they had lost or won, so they're all celebrating and crying and all that stuff. So on election day, I had lost. And the next day, the paper reported I had lost. But luckily, that night, the senator calls me. So we have one senator per district. Calls me, and he was a mentor, and he calls me, and he's like, "Don't believe the paper, you should go in person." And I worked in downtown Phoenix for the nonprofit. So every day I would go, and they added 10 votes. I won, I lost, I won, I lost. So I would update, the followers on social media, mostly friends and family, because I hadn't run a big social media campaign. Because again, the people I was running against, the biggest presence was the 62-year-old. he had 50 friends, and I had like 3,000, plus my political page. Mind you, all my friends were political and organizers. So like my branding for my signs was free. I messaged my friend who does graphics for Apple in New York, because he had been a student organizer. So that was free. I installed software that invites all your friends, so it doesn't limit you. That one's good. So whenever I make a new page, I just, and it invites all 3,000 friends, and usually it bumps the likes by 200-300. But every time I lose one or two, so it's a big sacrifice. Because they're like, why is he inviting me to all this? So I did sent the software and the instructions to like people I knew in Oregon and Washington, and they invited it to their friends. So then my likes went up exponentially. And if you're running against me locally, well, this is good point. If you're running against me locally, you say, wow, he has so many likes. Like, where are these people from? So then you spend money on your likes, which is a waste of time because traditionally they don't vote. So then the money they spend on their likes on Facebook, I spent on field campaign and actually knocking on the doors of the 50 to 80-year-olds that vote. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just wondering which if the app that you talk about working to increase your likes still works with the new Facebook algorithm.
Yeah.
Does it still work?
Yeah, it gets updated. Yeah, there's a few different ones like Invite All. Yeah.
Okay.
So I have that on my home desktop. It's a little trickier on like laptops and phones. But at the time, for example, Facebook hadn't done scheduling for posts.
Right.
So I looked at the statistics for when my type of voters were online. People that liked and followed me. So for my people, it was between 8 and 10 p.m. Mind you, this is when I was campaigning. So I would stop doing my lit drops, because after 8 I wouldn't talk to them anymore. I would go home and I would post something, and then it would get a bunch of traffic, and then I'd go back to campaigning. But it had to be at like 8:32 p.m. every day.
Yeah.
And now scheduling is in order. And the problem with me actually doing work is I might have 3 completely different types of events on the first day. So I'll have a post at 9 p.m., at 9 a.m., at 12, at 3, at 6, and they're all completely different. But they're all scheduled the day before. So I might say, yesterday I was doing blah, blah, blah. And that way I have a record for the next election. People are like, oh, he's doing something. Because they're used to people not doing anything.
Is your school district unionized?
Yeah.
Is it AFT?
No, it's AEA.
Okay.
Yeah.
There have been times when we've been able to talk to the union and say, look, if we put union buy on this stuff, we're gonna lose.
Yeah. So that was a big problem.
Compromise with it.
Being the first time, because I was running as a progressive pro-union, but that wasn't part of the conversation because I'm young. So for a debate, I had prepped a lot on sex ed policy because that's a big thing the high school district was going through. So I'm K through 8. So I prepped on this for hours. I sit down, and they're like, "Do you have kids in the district?" And I was like, it's like, what? So when you see the presidential debates, like local level, it's the same crap. So at the time, I'm with the girlfriend that quit on me, right? I quit on her. Okay.
No, she quit on you.
Okay, yeah. So we'll go with that. So at the time, now you made me lose my train of thought. So at the time, I'm sitting up there like that's not a policy question. But in my politician mind, I had to think on my feet, and there's 4 of us, right? And I came in first, by the way. But then because I didn't want to come in second and make it look like a mistake. That was my big thing. But then I look at my girlfriend sitting in the front row, and I'm like, well, actually, my girlfriend and me started dating in high school for 7 years, which isn't a lie, right? And I was like, we've dated for 7 years, and we're actually hoping to get married and have kids soon after this election. We're just getting financial stability. So everyone's like, oh, and she turned super red because she had no idea this was coming. Yeah, and this was the type of question. So, and that ties to the fact that compromise is very important, especially at the local level. So our high school district, again being one of the progressive cities in Arizona, passed sex ed policy. And I'm like, oh, cool, that's, let me go check it out. We went to their meeting. It's a 5-day program. Like, wrap your head around that for the record. For example, I think California's is outdated, and it's a 6-month 1980s videos. But that's the one I went through. That's how I turned out. So it's a 5-day program. It's opt-in, so you have an alternative religious program. So, and I grew up Catholic, and that's fine, but I believe a lot in separation of church and state. So it's a 5-day program. You have a religious alternative from what religion, the dominant, whatever it is in the neighborhood that year. And out of those 5 days, you can opt out of individual days. So you can go to 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. And so all the kids know different things. So let's say I'm in a relationship and the girl got 5 days and I didn't get anything. And she's going to be in control there. I don't know what's going on. And out of that program, they don't include abstinence. They don't include abortion. They don't include contraception. And this is for the non-religious one. So I'm sitting there like, what? And at the same time, we had a lot of our good friends, the Tea Party people, from Ahwatukee, which is another township, which is part of Phoenix, but it's in that school district. And it has a nickname called All White Tukey. I didn't know why until I saw them. So they come in like literally Bible thumping on the thing. And my professor, who's like a rhetoric-based Republican, I think he's wrong, but we talked about these people all the time because he was up for Speaker of the House in Arizona, and they didn't choose him, kind of like Boehner, because he wasn't far right enough. And on the left, the opposite problem is happening. So in terms of like Bernie, I was one of the only like 5 or 6 politicians I was willing to say I'm pro-Bernie. I wasn't militant about it and posting everywhere because again, I want my allies to be my allies. And the way the Hillary fundraisers have worked, it's very traditional. You show up, $25, $50, $100, all the way to $5,000. And the way the Bernie fundraisers, when we had the first office open outside the primaries in Arizona. I'm not going to take credit, but I was involved. Okay, but we had 300 people show up to a room half this size where our office was. Luckily, we had an overflow gala room, so all 300 people are cramped in there. And then I go up there and they're expecting a speech of like, let's do something. And I gave him the campaign plan. I was like, this is what we're doing. And they're all like non-political people that have never organized and I've never seen them, which is great, but it's also an organizing problem. So I told, this was under PDA, Progressive Democrats for America. Now we're switching over to the official campaign. So I'm the statewide organizer and the statewide director looks at me and he's like, how many of these people do you think are a little off? And I'm like 20%. He's like probably 40, because they've never organized. So that's kind of what happened with the Tea Party in 2012, which I always think was like a genius movement in terms of organizing. Because everyone's looking up at Obama like, oh, this guy's great. Meanwhile, the Tea Party's running for school board and state legislature. And in 2012, they pop out of nowhere. And everyone's like, where'd they come from? Because they did this institutional stuff. And that ties into leadership because 2 of my mentors are the congressmen of Tucson and of Phoenix. They're 2 of the progressives. The other ones are like corporate Democrats in Arizona. But the Tucson one has a pipeline of leadership and creating leadership because they don't necessarily challenge. They can challenge them, because they're good leaders. And in the Phoenix one, it's been more of like friendship and people that aren't necessarily such a big threat. So I was going to run in 2016, but I didn't want to look behind me and have no one there. So I'm building up to 2018, and meanwhile, marketing myself as a quote-unquote progressive leader. And then when I run in 2018, I can run pro-union because they looked at me like, who's this guy? You're pro-union, but we don't really know. So this last election, one of the big reasons I didn't run is all the unions were going to endorse me, but the big one in Arizona is UFCW. And they endorsed a libertarian incumbent because he said he'd vote for paid sick leave. And later on, they reached out to me as just a community member and an organizer, and they said, can you help us with paid sick leave? And I was like, I would have ran on this. You should have picked me. But I'm just going to do it because
it's the right thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah.